The most terrifying sea monster that ever lived wasn't a shark, it was a lizard. 70 million years ago, a monitor lizard returned to the sea and grew to 50 feet. It had teeth in its throat and a skull longer than your torso. Its name is Mosasaurus hoffmanii. And when you understand what it actually hunted, you begin to think the name might not be dramatic enough. 70 million years ago, the ocean was full of animals that shouldn't have been possible. Ichthyosaurs, the dolphin-shaped reptiles that had ruled the open water for millions of years, were already gone. They had vanished by the end of the early Cretaceous, leaving behind empty water columns and predator niches that nothing had filled. Pliosaurs, the long-necked hunters that once patrolled the upper reaches of the food chain, had been reduced to a few scattered families, shadows of what they used to be. The warm, shallow seas that covered much of the planet were wide open, and something moved in to fill the gap. It didn't rise from the deep, and it didn't migrate from another ocean. The land sent it back. Small lizards, squamates barely a meter long, began slipping back into the water around 98 million years ago. At first, they were shore scavengers, awkward swimmers with bodies built for dirt and sun. Their limbs were short and their tails weren't anything special. But the ocean rewards simplicity when the niche is empty. Over millions of years, the limbs flattened into paddles, the tail elongated and deepened, the body stretched and streamlined, the neck shortened to reduce drag. In less than 35 million years, those timid lizards became the largest marine reptiles the fossil record has ever produced. This isn't gradual adaptation. It's one of the fastest evolutionary radiations in the history of vertebrates, and it produced a predator so large that no modern marine reptile comes within half its length. Think about what that means. A land animal gave up its legs, rewrote its entire body plan, and conquered the ocean in a geological blink. The bones remember this speed. Every mosasaur fossil is a snapshot of a lineage in a hurry to grow, to dominate, to become something the ocean had never seen before. The legs shortened and flattened. The vertebrae elongated. The tail became the dominant engine. The jaws lengthened and filled with teeth. Within a few million years, the animal was no longer a lizard trying to swim. It was a swimmer that happened to have lizard ancestry. In April of 2025, geologists were surveying land near Starkville, Mississippi, when they pulled a single bone from a riverbed. It was a vertebra, massive and heavy, and based on its size, the animal it came from was at least 30 feet long. The bone belonged to Mosasaurus hoffmanii. It had been sitting in ancient mud for 66 million years, from a time when warm seas stretched across half the North American continent and turned what is now dry land into seabed. That sea was called the Western Interior Seaway, and it ran from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean, teeming with ammonites, sea turtles, giant fish, and other marine reptiles. The geologists weren't looking for fossils. They were checking soil composition, and the bone simply appeared in the mud, too large to ignore. This animal wasn't a relic on the way out. It was thriving. The fossil record in Morocco shows astounding mosasaur diversity right up to the final moments of the Cretaceous. Paleontologists have found remains of large and small mosasaurs, multiple species living side by side, all thriving in the same warm waters. They were at the height of their power when the world ended. No predator that large should disappear so completely. But the bones say more. Now we can talk about what this animal actually was. Mosasaurus hoffmanii is the largest marine reptile known from the fossil record, and the numbers don't prepare you for what they mean. Adults average 39 to 42 feet in length, roughly the size of a school bus. Some individuals may have reached 57 feet, though that upper estimate remains debated among paleontologists. Even the conservative numbers are enough to place this animal in a category of its own. A 1995 study in the Royal Society's Philosophical Transactions estimated that an individual with a skull measuring more than 145 centimeters would have been at least 11 meters long and weighed approximately 10 metric tons. That's the mass of a large modern sperm whale, compressed into a body built for pursuit and ambush. To put that in context, a fully grown African elephant weighs about 6 metric tons. This lizard weighed more. A full-grown male orca is roughly 8 metric tons. This lizard weighed more. The skull alone, at 145 centimeters, is longer than most adult human torsos. It's the length of a kayak, the height of a standard doorframe, and it was filled with teeth from front to back. And that skull wasn't just big. It was engineered. The cranial bones are tightly packed together, creating a skull that could withstand enormous mechanical stress. Engineers call this approach finite element analysis when they model it on computers, but the animal solved it through evolution. The skull was a self-reinforcing structure built to absorb and transmit force from a struggling animal without cracking. This was no delicate predator. The skull was a battering ram with teeth. The jaw carries the obvious set, long conical fangs that curve slightly backward to grip prey like a crocodile. Think about what a fang does. It punches, it grips, and it kills. Now imagine a mouth where the fangs are only the first line of defense and the real trap is behind them. The pterygoid bones of the palate carry a second row of teeth, backward curving and angled toward the throat. When the main jaw closed on prey, these interior teeth engaged like a ratchet. There was no direction to escape. Forward meant the throat, backward meant the primary fangs. This dual jaw system is something no living marine predator possesses, not sharks, not orcas, not crocodiles. It's a biological trap built at a scale the modern ocean has never seen. 4 paddle-shaped limbs provided steering and stabilization, but they weren't the main engine. Each paddle was a flattened, webbed appendage that could make fine adjustments to trajectory, allowing the animal to turn and pivot with surprising precision for something so large. Propulsion came from a long, powerful tail, deep and muscular, with some species possessing a bilobed tail fluke similar to a shark's. The tail didn't just push water, it snapped it, generating thrust in explosive bursts. The vertebral column was highly flexible, and the tail vertebrae lengthened toward the tip, creating a whip-like structure that could accelerate the animal from a hover to a strike in seconds. Some researchers compare the swimming style to that of a giant monitor lizard crossed with a shark, a hybrid of undulating power and pointed acceleration. The body was essentially a flexible tube of muscle, and the tail provided the whip-like drive that made sudden bursts possible. Skin impressions show smooth, streamlined scales without any armored plating. This animal was built for speed and efficiency, not defense. It had no need for armor because nothing in the ocean could challenge it. The brain, relative to that massive body, was small. The skull cavity suggests a brain roughly the size of a clenched fist inside a head the size of a kayak. This wasn't a clever predator. It didn't need to outthink its prey. It needed to detect movement, calculate angles, and close its jaws. The rest was handled by physics and anatomy. The ocean had built an efficient machine. It didn't need strategy. It needed mass, power, and a mouth that couldn't fail. And that's where it gets stranger. The world that produced this animal wasn't like the ocean you know now. Sea levels were higher, temperatures warmer, and shallow seas covered vast portions of the continents. The Western Interior Seaway cut North America in half from north to south, a warm inland ocean that would have looked alien to modern eyes. At its deepest, it reached depths of over 2,000 feet, but much of it was shallow, sunlit, and staggeringly productive. You could have stood on the shore where Denver is now and watched waves roll in from an ocean that no longer exists. The Tethys Sea connected what is now Europe, Africa, and Asia in a warm web of archipelagos and coral reefs. These weren't marginal habitats at the edge of the land. They were the center of life on Earth. The climate itself was different. Carbon dioxide levels were far higher than today, and there were no ice caps at the poles. The water was warm from surface to bottom in many places, and the circulation patterns moved nutrients in ways that made every level of the food chain explode. The ecosystem was staggeringly productive. Ammonites, those coiled shelled cephalopods, existed in numbers that are hard to comprehend today. Their shells formed thick layers on ancient seabeds, and they filled roles similar to modern fish as both predators and prey. Some grew to the size of car tires, while others remained small and abundant, forming the base of a food web that supported everything above them. Sea turtles the size of small cars paddled through the shallows. Giant fish, plesiosaurs with necks longer than a man, and sharks of every size filled the water column. Pterosaurs glided overhead, dipping their jaws to snatch fish from the surface. Birds that looked more like modern shorebirds picked at the edges of the water. And then there were the other mosasaurs, dozens of species ranging from modest 6-foot hunters to the 50-foot giant that sat at the top. Moroccan fossils show incredible diversity right up to the end of the Cretaceous. Scientists have uncovered remains of large and small mosasaurs, many species coexisting, all flourishing in the same warm waters. This ecosystem had redundancy at every level. If one prey species faltered, there were 10 others to take its place. If one predator failed, another filled the gap. The water was warm enough that metabolic rates ran high, which meant animals grew fast and reproduced in vast numbers. The water column was so full of life that visibility would have been limited in places, not by mud, but by the sheer density of organisms. Schools of fish moved in formations that darkened the light. Ammonite shells caught the sun in flashes of mother-of-pearl. Plesiosaurs moved through the water with methodical grace, their long necks scanning for schools of fish to sweep into their jaws. Sharks patrolled the open water, but they weren't the apex predators here. They were mid-level hunters, aware that something much larger could appear below them at any moment. This wasn't a dying world. Entire ecosystems thrived in seas built for monsters. The system worked. It was a world designed to produce giants. But here is the part of the story that matters most. We know what Mosasaurus ate because the bones remember. Ammonite shells from the period carry bite marks that match mosasaur teeth with forensic precision. The marks aren't random crushing. They're punctures that align exactly with the spacing and curvature of known mosasaur jaws. In some cases, the shells were bitten multiple times, suggesting the mosasaur attacked, released, and attacked again, treating the ammonite like a living toy. Some shells even show healing, which means the ammonite survived the first encounter only to face the same predator again later. Fossilized stomach contents show sea turtles, large fish, and even other mosasaurs. Remains of smaller mosasaurs inside larger ones prove that cannibalism wasn't unusual. This animal wasn't a picky feeder. It was an apex predator in the truest sense, eating anything it could trap inside its mouth. Picture the surface of the Western Interior Seaway 66 million years ago. The water is warm and clear, and a sea turtle is swimming just below the surface, unaware. Sunlight filters down in pale green shafts, and the turtle is drifting, relaxed, occasionally dipping its head to graze on seaweed. The air is humid and heavy, and the surface of the water barely ripples in the thick heat. Above the water, pterosaurs are gliding on thermals, casting shadows that slide across the turtle's back. Below it, at a depth of about 50 feet, a mosasaurus is holding position in deeper water, its four paddles making tiny adjustments to keep it level. The tail is still. The head is angled upward. The eyes, set high on the sides of the skull, are watching the silhouette above. The heat of the surface water creates a faint shimmer, and the Mosasaurus tracks the turtle's shadow with movements so small they barely disturb the water around it. It doesn't rush. The predator waits until the geometry is perfect. Then the tail unleashes. The animal surges upward with explosive force, the streamlined body cutting through the water like a spear. The jaws open. The first strike isn't a bite. The jaws lock in a grip. The conical teeth punch into shell and flesh and don't let go. But the real kill happens in the throat. As the jaw closes and the prey tries to twist free, it pushes backward against the pterygoid teeth. Those backward curving interior fangs dig in deeper the more the prey struggles. The harder it fights, the tighter the trap becomes. Every muscle contraction in the prey's body only drives it deeper into the secondary jaws. Forward pressure drives the prey deeper into the throat trap. Backward pressure only deepens the grip of the primary fangs. There's no winning move. Unlike a shark which slices and tears, this predator gripped and swallowed. Unlike a crocodile which drags prey to drown, this animal had no need for a death roll. The trap did the killing. Because Mosasaurus breathed air, it couldn't stay submerged indefinitely. It had to surface, which meant its hunts were bursts of violence rather than prolonged chases. It struck, trapped, and processed its kill quickly, often near the surface where it could breathe. The eyes were positioned for upward scanning, ideal for an ambush predator that attacked from below. It likely hunted by silhouette, watching the dark shape of prey against the brighter surface, the same way modern crocodiles watch for wildebeest at the water's edge. The entire strategy was built on patience, positioning, and one perfect burst of violence. This isn't any chewing predator. The jaws were built for swallowing. They ratchet the prey backward in chunks, or whole if the victim is small enough. The evidence says mosasaurs ate other mosasaurs. They ate sea turtles, they ate ammonites, they ate anything that moved. And they did it with a mouth that functioned like a living conveyor belt of teeth. The ocean had built something that didn't need to be smart. It needed to be absolute. And for 20 million years, that was enough. And that's where it stops making sense. If Mosasaurus was so perfectly adapted, so utterly dominant, so completely in command of its world, then its disappearance is the real mystery. The honest answer is that nothing killed it, nothing hunted it to extinction. No rival outcompeted it. Around 66 million years ago, the asteroid struck. The impact site was on the Yucatan Peninsula, and the blast was equivalent to billions of atomic bombs. The climate shifted in hours and days, not centuries. The impact threw debris into the atmosphere, blocked the sun, and triggered a collapse that rippled through every food chain on Earth. Temperatures dropped, photosynthesis faltered, and acid rain fell across the oceans. The warm, shallow seas that had covered the continents began to drain and cool. The food chains that supported the ammonites, the sea turtles, the giant fish, and the smaller mosasaurs collapsed. Mosasaurus hoffmanii was at the height of its evolutionary radiation when the world disappeared. The KPG boundary isn't a gradual decline in the fossil record. It is a wall. On one side, mosasaurs of every size are thriving in oceans across the planet. On the other side, there's nothing. Plesiosaurs, pterosaurs, non-avian dinosaurs, and the entire lineage of marine lizards that had conquered the sea in under 35 million years were erased in a geological instant. Some groups survived. Sharks made it through. Sea turtles made it through. Certain fish made it through. Crocodiles made it through. Certain marine invertebrates made it through. But the marine lizards that had built an empire didn't. The reason is simple. Mosasaurus was too specialized. It was built for a world of warm, shallow, hyper-productive seas, and when that world ended, there was no place for it to go. It couldn't adapt to deep, cold water. It couldn't shrink and survive on scraps. It needed large prey in warm seas, and when those prey vanished, the predators starved. The asteroid didn't just kill the dinosaurs on land. It collapsed the entire marine food web that had supported the largest predators in the ocean for millions of years. The collapse wasn't selective. It was total. The plankton died. The fish that ate the plankton died. The predators that ate the fish died. And the apex predators that ruled above them all starved in an ocean that had become a desert overnight. Within months, the mosasaurs that had dominated every warm sea on Earth were gone. Within years, the plesiosaurs followed. Within centuries, the entire marine reptile dynasty that had ruled for millions of years was erased. It was a machine built for one factory, and the factory burned down. The ocean didn't stop making monsters because it lost the ability. The conditions that produced them simply vanished. The warmth, the empty niches, the unguarded ecosystems all converged into the world you live in now. The ocean became colder, more stable, and permanently closed for the kind of business it used to do. It happened in an instant. The greatest marine predator the world has ever known was gone. The loss was total and permanent, and the ocean has never been the same since. The Komodo dragon still hunts on Indonesian islands. It remains 10 feet of venom and muscle, the largest lizard on Earth, and a direct echo of what once swam. But the shadow it casts is tiny. The ocean used to build lizards into gods. Then it stopped. The era of giants was over. If you want to know what else the ocean is hiding, that video is next.